Hello. Good morning, good evening, good night, all around the world. We have people connected from everywhere. I'm looking at the comment now. And welcome to Darren and Daniel. Before introducing yourself, this live is about the development tools for Power BI and analysis services. We invited Darren Gosbell and Daniel Otykier, yes, I hope the pronunciation is right, who are the author of DAX Studio and Tabular Editor. And of course, we could talk also about other tools, but this is the first time I think that we are able to have both Daniel and Darren together in the same live because they are in completely different time zones. Darren lives in Melbourne, Australia, and Daniel in Denmark. Not sure about the place, but I know that I have seen people from the United States where there are, depending on the time zone, it's between 6 a.m. or 3 a.m. And thank you for losing the sleep time to watch our video. And you can interact. I will take a look at the comments, and I will provide questions also to Darren and Daniel, depending on the questions we receive. So, Darren, do you want to start? You are from Australia, so you're, very on the other side of the world, for at least from our point of view. So, can you introduce yourself?
Sure, I can have a go at doing that. So I'm Darren Gosbell. I've been working with Microsoft BI since, I started working with a consulting firm in 1999, and a few of the guys there were looking at a product called Plato, which was the code name for OLAP Services 7. So I actually sort of got in the door on the ground floor with MDX and stuff with the first release of the Microsoft BI tools, and I've been on that journey ever since. So worked for a couple of consulting firms and a couple of big enterprise firms here in Melbourne, and I suppose I started off with MDX, and back when you had version 7, there was actually a tool called DAX Studio, which is, you probably hear the similarity there, and that was just distributed as Visual Basic source code. So you had to compile the source code, and so that was my first foray into development tools, was editing a version of DAX Studio to add some functionality that I wanted, and it's sort of grown from there. I've been an MVP since 2006, so I've been 15 years now. I've got my 3 little blue discs on my MVP award.
Yeah. I have mine back on the back too.
And and I suppose worked with a bunch of different tools, because before DAX Studio I had we still do support BI developer extensions, which was a extension for what is now SSDT. It used to be called BIDS Helper, because the development tools used to be BI Development Studio, or BIDS for short. We had a number of people collaborating on that, and myself and Greg Galloway still sort of look after BI Development Studio, but other than sort of updating it each time Microsoft breaks it with new releases to the the BI add-ins, unfortunately, because we're hooking into undocumented APIs, they're free to change them, and they frequently do. But a quick couple of minutes on my background.
Okay, let's go to Daniel.
Yeah, thank you, Marco. Yeah, so I'm Daniel Otykier, and I live in Kolding, a city in southern Denmark. And I've actually been a Microsoft BI consultant for a little over 13 years. I started in 2008, back when we were working with analysis services multi-dimensional. So already back then, when I started, I enjoyed the works of Darren and other people in the community with BIDS Helper and all of these tools. Great tools. We used them a lot back then. But then, of course, in 2012, when we started to work on analysis services Tabular, and in 2016, especially when Microsoft changed the metadata format over to the JSON-based, TOM format that we have today. That's when I started to work on Tabular Editor. Yeah, that's basically how I got into this community, how I got my MVP award 2 years ago. So yeah, that's sort of the ultra short introduction. So Tabula Editor is my main contribution to the community. Unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to be involved in any of the other tools. But yeah, that's sort of the short introduction for me.
Yep. Okay, good. So what I would like to do, let's see if I can, okay. What I would like to do is just to go through the past, the present, and the future. So I know that we have some announcement to do, but we have to wait until we go to the future, right? So I would like to discover, so basically today we take for granted that we have these tools, but actually they started not even with Power BI, they started several years ago or many years ago with other targets, other markets, other users, usually BI developers. So can you tell us something about the very early days, how the project started, and when? So first of all, when is the first release? When is the date of the first release of each tool, and when did you see that the tool actually took off? Right, it was no longer a tool used by a few people that know each other, but started to be used by a larger, community. You no longer have any idea about how many people are using the tool. So when did you see that? It was just last year for Power BI Desktop, or it happened before? So who wants to start? Darren.
I can, yeah, if you like, I can go first. Oh,
Yep.
There I am. Yeah, so we started DAX Studio back in July 2012 was the first release.
Yeah.
And it actually happened as a conversation I had with one of the program managers that used to work at Microsoft, Edward Melamed.
Edward, yeah.
Yeah.
He's responsible for me and Alberto writing books on DAX, by the way. So Edward was,
Yep. And he launched the seed that was DAX Studio. Because we'd sort of been pulling apart, because at the time the only thing that had DAX in it was Power Pivot. That was the only place the Tabular engine existed at the time, and we'd been sort of pulling it apart and realized that it was generating MDX queries, but with these little DAX measures injected into it. And I was sort of complaining to him that this seemed crazy to design a language and then have it sort of injected inside MDX. And that was when he said, "Oh no, it's a full programming language and it's got a full query model, and you write these evaluate statements." So that sort of started the ball rolling that was possible, and then I just had to figure out how to connect within Excel. That was totally undocumented and unsupported, and that sort of figured it out from there. And a few months later, and a bit of help from yourself, Marco, and a few other people, we had an Excel add-in running with a little Visual Basic Forms.
True, it was a
Windows Forms.
I don't remember. Was the first version just the add-in for Power Pivot, or it was an external tool? I don't remember that. It was external tool, right?
It was an Excel add-in.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was still a C#, so it was a Visual Studio add-in that we wrote, and had to do all sorts of. We still do some tricks in the background to connect to Power Pivot and get a connection going, because it's an internal thing to Excel. So we still support that. It was and then it was version 2. At the time we were still on Codeplex, which is getting shut down in about a month. So the old Codeplex site used to be sort of a competitor to GitHub. You could host source code on there, and it was a Microsoft sort of sponsored platform. Almost ahead of its time, because you had a little project page a wiki where you could edit stuff and releases and downloads, and it was quite a good platform for its day. But it wasn't until sort of 2016 that we migrated over to GitHub. So there's a little bit of a few. I've still got an archive of the releases and the source code off Codeplex, but and we did migrate all of the source to GitHub, but some of the releases we didn't bother. We just sort of went from, I think, version 2.6 onwards. But yeah, the version 2 was where we went with the WPF standalone tool.
What did you use before WPF? I don't remember. It was Windows Forms?
Yeah, it was Windows Forms.
Okay. But when did you see the explosion of DAX Studio, if there was one? It was a linear progression of user adoption, or it was all of a sudden at a certain point something happened and boom?
No, there wasn't really a boom. There was I've got sort of the stats from the GitHub releases, and we sort of back in 2016 we had about 2,500 downloads, and it's probably we did sort of 2 or 3 releases a year, so it really sort of spiked in 2018. I'm not really sure why that was with the
Power BI
2.74 release. It was probably the Power BI desktop, because
when I think then when do you remember when you implemented the connection to Power BI finding the port automatically? Because before that we had to find a port manually, right?
Yep. Yeah, no, that was in 2016 sometime, I think.
Oh wow. So
it was because there's still things in the codes talking about Power BI Designer.
But probably it's because it was ahead of time. So Power BI doubled the market share year by year for many years. And so at the beginning, it was a smaller community. Now it is huge. And today is bigger than 1 year ago and much bigger than 2 years ago. And so probably you just follow the Power BI adoption. Yeah.
Yeah. And probably the other spike was when we added VertiPack Analyzer. So there's a...
Really? I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's small, but probably 25% jump around the 2.10 release when we added VertiPack Analyzer. I think that's been another big driver.
Yeah, good. I mean, we spent a lot of time doing that. So. Nice. So let's hear from Daniel. What is the story for Tabular Editor?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned in the beginning, the real enabler for Tabular Editor was when Microsoft, back in with the release of SQL Server Analysis Services 2016, changed the metadata format for storing the metadata of tabular models from the XML-based format to the JSON-based format, the one that is known today as TOM, Tabular Object Model. Because with this change, they also provided an API, so a programmatic way for us to interact with the model metadata. And at the time, I was working with a larger client here in Denmark. We were building analysis services tabular models in Visual Studio, SSDT. And this was a pretty large enterprise client. They had a tabular model with some 50 or so tables and thousands of measures. And all of these measures were, of course, organized in display folders. So they had this hierarchy structure so they could navigate through the measures of the model. And then one day the client comes up to me and asks me if, hey, could you take these 800 measures and move them to a different display folder? And I was like, sure. That's going to take me 2 weeks, but I can do it because at the time with the tool we had back then, SSDT, you had to go in on every individual measure and change the display folder string, with the backslashes path thing. And I thought for a minute maybe if I could do a quick search and replace or something like that in the model metadata file. But that wouldn't work because a lot of the names of the display folder path were sort of names like sales and stuff like that would appear in many different places throughout the model metadata. So I was scared that if I just did a simple search and replace throughout the metadata, that I would probably break some other code in other places. So I at the time I thought that the only real option was to create some sort of script to try to navigate through the JSON programmatically and do this change. And that was actually the very first version of Tabula Editor, because by then I discovered that there was this API provided by Microsoft, making it very easy to programmatically work with metadata. So the very first version, internal version of Tabula Editor, all it did was basically to show all of the measures in a hierarchy structure, and then let me drag and drop, multi-select and drag and drop the measures across different display folders. So it took me maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours to create this little first version of the tool. And then once I had that, it only took me 2 or 3 minutes to solve the problem for the customer. And at that point, it hit me that, hey, why stop there? Why not just, expand this tool to allow editing, well, any property of any object in the tabular object model? And at that point, I kept working on it for a little bit. And so I believe it was back in August of 2016 when we released Tabula Editor, the first version, publicly on the Capacity, the company I work for, on their website. And this very first version was basically just, an editor for all properties across all objects on the tabular object model. And so I think from there, there wasn't really a lot of downloads at the beginning. It was also the code wasn't made public on GitHub or anything like that. But a few months later, in the beginning of 2017, I decided that, hey, since I have a full-time job, I don't think I have the time to commit that much time to this tool. So it might be a better option for us to just release all of the code on open source on GitHub. So maybe others in the community would like to contribute to the tool because other people could find it useful. And I think that was also around the time that Marco, that you contacted me and said, hey, this was actually a pretty good idea. What were my thoughts and so on. And so I think it was in January 2017 when the code was released on GitHub, where I had also made some updates. So this was actually the first version 2.0 that was released at that point. And that's when I started to see the first sort of people really starting to pick up the tool and using it. And a few months after that, a guy from Microsoft, some of you may already know him, Michael Kowalski. Today he works with the Power BI CAT team. That's also when he reached out, because at the time he was working internally in the Microsoft Finance department doing reporting on tabular models for them, and they had actually had the idea of building some tool similar to that inside their team, and that's when he discovered Tabula Editor. So at that point, I know Michael also has a blog. He started blogging about things you can do with Tabula Editor, and so the adoption slowly picked up also from there. But I think that the main point where it's really exploded was, of course, last summer in July 2020. When Microsoft announced the external tools support for Power BI, a feature which I also helped create as part of the Power BI contributor program. That's when Microsoft sort of officially said that, hey, even though we knew even before then that we could use Tabula Editor to make some changes to the Power BI model, and sometimes it also worked. At that point in July last year, when they officially announced the external tools support, that's when people really started to pick up Tabula Editor. All of the Power BI desktop users could now use it for adding measures and even doing stuff that was not supported inside the Power BI desktop directly, like adding calculation groups and perspectives and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's when it really exploded. I think today, when I look at the numbers in GitHub, with every new release, I have around 15,000 downloads.
Wow, 15,000 is
15,000. Yeah. So give it a month or two, but at that point there will be around 15,000. Now I cannot know for sure if this is a good figure, because I know that a lot of people are also automating downloads of Tabula Editor as part of automated release pipelines and that kind of thing. But that's sort of my gut feeling is that that's an approximate number of users of Tabula Editor.
Now, before we move forward, I would like to share a link. We prepared this page. I mean, this is the same page that announced this live. At the bottom of this page, you will find links to content that could be useful. I will add links after the live, adding directions to articles or other tools that we can discuss. I already included an article I recently wrote with also in the collaboration with many people, including someone from Microsoft, describing the situation about the development tools for Power BI and analysis services, which is actually the topic for the discussion today. Because one of the drivers for me for writing that that article was the need to explain why we need multiple tools to develop a solution for Tabular. Tabular is the engine shared by analysis services and Power BI. And the reason is that many companies, and I would like to see the comments here, but today not many, but several companies put a restriction in using additional tools, open source or not, it doesn't matter, or maybe sometimes it matters, but it's not that point. The idea is that, oh no, we need the official tool from Microsoft. But as Daniel explained, what actually Microsoft provides is a framework and a library and a format. And if you write code in, write a model using that format, it is supported. It is not that if it is written in Notepad, if you write a model.bin file in Notepad, it is supported. You just have to follow the specification. And if you cannot deploy the model, you will get an error. So it is supported. And so there could be other reasons why you don't want to use other software, but it's not that it is not supported, because it is supported, the model. Of course, the user interface of the development tool is not supported by Microsoft if it is provided by another company. But the thing is, and here we can open a lot of discussion, that Microsoft today doesn't provide the best tool for the job for the developers, for the advanced developers that use these, that use the tabular model. And I think this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this event too, is because as of today, to me, it seems that, and we can introduce this way the present, it seems that is an important part of the productivity, having both tools, even just for an average Power BI developer, because to be honest, you cannot access certain features of Power BI if you don't have Tabular Editor. You cannot optimize the performance seriously if you don't have DAX Studio. So just to, these two simple tasks require additional tools. So just to, move forward to the discussion and going to the present, I think that Daniel already answered to the first question, which is how many users we can estimate for Tabular Editor. And 15,000 is just the number of downloads in a month, but we can certainly say that we had tens of thousands of users, even just occasional users of Tabular Editor. What about DAX Studio, Darren?
Yeah, so I was just checking the GitHub downloads. We've got over 35,000 downloads for the last release, which was a couple of months ago. So it often takes a few months for it to ramp up. And because DAX Studio does checks if there's a newer update each time it starts up, I've got sort of rough stats on how many people have started up DAX Studio. So that's pretty close in line. I've got about 36,000 distinct users last month. And I can see about, 36,000 last month. And most of them started up 3 or 4 times. So most people are using it once a week or so by the look of it, if the stats are right. And probably about half of those are on the current version, and the rest are on older versions. So,
Alberto, did you wanted to say something?
No, I was just basically listening, but the point you raised, companies not using DAX Studio or not using Tabula Editor and just pretending to use Microsoft tools, I think they are missing the most productive part of tabular development, because if you think of simple stuff like working in a multi-monitor environment, I mean, Power BI Desktop is just one monitor, one display. You can either look at the report or you look at the DAX code, you need to look very close because the space you have to write DAX code is really tiny. Or you look at the diagram view. That means you cannot have a single picture of the entire development process. I always have the data model on one monitor. I have the DAX code in another monitor. I have a query maybe in the third monitor. I have plenty of monitors, by the way. And the report is just one of those. And to me, development is basically, I mean, I don't use that Power BI Desktop to develop nearly anything because I use it for the report. But if I need to write code, I either use Tabular Editor or I use DAX Studio to write the code and then I move it back to Power BI Desktop. So I think if a company today still place restrictions on the usage of these kind of tools, they are basically hurting themselves for no particular reason. There is not a single reason to prevent your users from using these tools. And the other thing that I think is worth to mention is that even though these are developer tools, I mean, they are open source, they have a user interface that targets developers. Regular users should start to think about using them and learn how to use them, because the productivity that you have in writing DAX code or in investigating in performance is so incredibly it's so incredibly high. I mean, just copy and paste a measure. It's the simplest thing that you can think about, but DAX Studio lets you do that.
Okay.
And besides, one thing that I think is really worth that I'm really curious to see is that people are excited and numbers are extremely high right now, and most people are probably using Tabular Editor too. We have a different vision of the world because it's a few months that we are using Tabular Editor 3. And I'm really curious to see what's going to happen as soon as everybody discovers.
We will talk about that in a moment. We're talking about the present. We're going to the future soon. So just to close the discussion about the present, because everybody wants to see the future, but what do you see? Let's start from Daniel this time. What do you see as the common use case for Tabular Editor today? And then we'll see for DAX Studio. I mean, is it mainly used by Power BI developers or analysis services developers, or I don't know, business users doing something? I trying to work around limitations. What is your feedback from the comments you receive?
Yeah, so as Tabula Editor started as a tool for analysis services developers, I feel that those users are the ones that sort of use Tabula Editor for the most advanced purposes. I mean, these are people that will basically create data models from scratch using Tabula Editor. They're going to use Tabula Editor's special save to folder functionality so that they can put all of the model metadata in a source control environment, working multiple developers in parallel, and even sometimes setting up automated builds and deployments and so on. So these are actually some pretty advanced use cases that these developers set up on their end, doing stuff like using Tabula Editor's command line interface, running the best practice analyzer, that kind of thing. But recently, and again, this is also thanks to Michael Kowalski from the CAT team, as I mentioned earlier, I've really seen that people, also Power BI users, have started to pick up Tabula Editor for more advanced purposes than just adding or copying measures, that kind of thing. Specifically, he made a blog post a few weeks ago and provided a list of like Microsoft certified best practices to use with Tabula Editor. So you can find this blog post on the Power BI blog where Michael created I think something like 60 different rules for the best practice analyzer in Tabula Editor to scan the Power BI model for various common mistakes, best practices, and so on. And so I've definitely seen that a lot of Power BI users have started to move into this more advanced territory. We also have customers that use, typically Power BI Premium customers that also use the full-blown experience of Tabula Editor with version control integration and setting up automated builds, automated deployments to their Power BI workspaces and so on. All of that is also possible. But of course, there's a learning curve. And so it takes time, if you're just a self-service analyst building a model for the first time in Power BI Desktop, then of course it will take some time to to understand what's going on and where tools like Tabular Editor can help you become more productive.
Yeah. What about DAX Studio, Darren? What do you see as DAX Studio common use these days? Is it more for Power BI or still for analysis services?
Probably just going anecdotally, because we don't really collect much other than the sort of anonymous who's fired it up and requested a download. But from issues and things like that come up and questions on GitHub, I think we're getting a lot more Power BI, especially with the external tools. That's probably been a big enabler, even though it's sort of one less click to get connected. It's still, it's just, right there in your ribbon. And I use it myself when I'm doing prototypes and in Power BI, or, looking at someone else's model, I'll just launch DAX Studio from there, even though I've got it pinned on my start bar as well. And then I think because DAX Studio's been around for quite a while, like the server timings is sort of the bread and butter of the performance tuning, but there's also the VertiPack analyzer for optimizing your model, and the sort of the exporting data feature seems to be relatively popular, I think, especially for Power BI and Power Pivot users as well. I know I had a question from one guy that he'd used Power Pivot to concatenate 60,000 CSVs together, and then was using DAX Studio to push that out into a single file. So he'd done all of the ETL and he cleaned it all up, and he was having out of memory issues with Power Pivot, but
good. I'm looking. I mean, we have many people connected, and it would be nice to answer to all the questions, but I think there's just one that, there are many questions that we don't have time, but I think this one is interesting, because I don't know if Darren or, I think that actually Adam Saxton has had a good answer to this, which is we don't get approval for DAX Studio or maybe Tabular Editor. What can we do? And I think that the best thing you can do, you can say Microsoft is using it internally, and you can ask to, Adam is in the chat window. I have seen Adam replying to questions too, and actually is the best demonstration that actually is is one of the tools that you should have, just because if you want to be productive. Now, I understand those very limited situations where you have a company that has, for example, I don't know, military space or government. There could be a need for validation, but by the way, it's just a question of cost, because the code for these tools is open source. So actually, you could validate the code internally. Of course, it is expensive because it has a cost to do this validation. And when you buy a commercial product, you basically move the liability to the vendor, right? Because if the vendor creates a damage, he's responsible for that. With the open source, it's much harder to obtain this liability. And I think that this is the problem. But at the end of the day, in a commercial company, it's more a question that nobody in the IT want to feel responsible for a data breach or something like that. Once again, there are ways to find a balance between these things, I think.
Marco, I also think that the latest article that you guys wrote, where there's also this official statement from Amir Netz at Power BI, I think that's also a very good thing to show to an IT organization who's hesitant to allow the use of these external tools, because it doesn't get much more clearer than that Microsoft fully supports the use of these external tools.
So because I know that everybody wants to see what is coming on, but before going there, I think it's important to establish another thing. The common belief is that, it's open source, it's free. Well, actually, nothing is free, so you always have to pay. And oftentimes when you don't pay for a service, you are the product. That's the common saying, right? And I think this is not the case for DAX Studio and Tabular Editor. They didn't leverage the penetration in the market to provide services or to sell something, right? So my feeling is that they are not tools built for another purposes in mind, and they are actually free from a certain point of view. But at the same time, if as a company I rely on a tool, I think that it is a good idea to make sure that the tool will be supported in the future. And this could be another concern for adopting an open source tool, which is, what if the tool is not supported? Once again, it's not so important because you're just using a tool that supports you, but actually the engine is the Microsoft engine, so is Microsoft supporting the engine. But the thing is that I want to be able to continue to develop in Tabular Editor in the future, because if I rely on Tabular Editor today, moving back to Visual Studio or to Power BI Desktop would be a total nightmare, to be honest. And DAX Studio improves my productivity. I don't want to get rid of DAX Studio anytime soon. And if Darren stops supporting DAX Studio, we would be in trouble, because, for example, SQL BI uses DAX Studio for every training and every article and every demo we do. And for a living, we sell training, we sell consulting. Without DAX Studio, we will not be able to do many, or we will not be able to do, like we do today, many things we do. So what about the economic model? So how can we support it? And I think we have now two different models. I think that we can start with Darren, that has started recently the crowdfunding, right, Darren?
Yeah. So we, I think you actually spilt the beans on Twitter as soon as we sort of got the sponsor page up. But we have taken advantage of a new capability on GitHub to enable people to sponsor it at a sort of project level. I sort of had looked before at that at some of the other sort of buy me a coffee type websites, but they were sort of aimed at personal type projects. So this sort of enables us to have DAX Studio as a project, and people can contribute to that on a one-off or on an ongoing basis. So SQL BI is our first gold level sponsor. So they're on our sponsors page on the daxstudio.org website, and that's sort of enabling a bit of extra funds to help justify spending more time and things on it. DAX Studio largely started as a tool I wanted to use myself, but there's been a bunch of things we've sort of added as people have asked over the years, which has been good.
I think my personal point of view about that is that after so many years, the concern is that someone could get tired of supporting such a tool, and so the having a source of revenues could be a very good motivation to keep it moving. Also because, to be honest, DAX Studio doesn't have as many contributors like many other open source tools. That's another problem I have seen. I said, okay, but how many people are working on this open source tool, similarly to Tabular Editor? But I mean, because Darren has, you are employed, right? You are not a consultant, right, Darren? Okay.
Yep.
So he has, he actually do this in his spare time. He's not able to do that in his working time. And so he needs a good motivation to do that. And maybe he has to be able to, hire someone at a certain point if he doesn't have enough time. Because to be honest, the community of DI developers is not made by professional developers that write code in C#. Someone do that, but not as many people as we would need to continue the support of this tool that is used by thousands of people. So the direction made by Darren, I think, is the direction of using a crowdfunding, because Darren doesn't have a company, right? You don't have a company you don't do this for a commercial purpose, right, Daniel?
No.
Darren, sorry.
No.
Okay. And so this is the thing. So let me retrieve the link here. I will add. I think we don't have the link to the sponsorship page for DAX Studio, but if you go to GitHub, you will see this page, and I will add this after the live. So I will add the page where you can contribute to the crowdfunding, even just a small amount of money every month. You know, many people means a lot of support for Darren. And so let's move to Daniel, and let's talk about Tabular Editor, because Tabular Editor has a different approach to the economic sustainability, right?
Yeah. So as I said earlier, I work as a consultant, and for the most part, my work on the open source version of Tabula Editor so far has actually been driven by specific client demands. So I've been able to you know, based on some customer feedback, using some spare time as well, I've been able to sort of manage things, even though I've spent way too many late hours developing the tool. But of course, that's not a sustainable model, especially if now that the adoption has grown, a lot of people provide feedback, support requests, and that kind of thing. And lately, it just takes too much time. And if any of you are active on the GitHub forum, you will probably also have noticed that I take a lot longer to respond to issues that are raised today than I did 2 or 3 years ago, when I only had a user base of maybe 500 or 1,000 people. The path that we are aiming for is that we actually want to commercialize Tabula Editor, but keep in mind that this is going to be an entirely new version of Tabula Editor. We call it Tabula Editor 3. And now let me share for the first time the release date. It's going to be publicly released on June 1st.
So let me see. Are you sharing the screen? Not yet, right?
Not yet.
Okay. So we go back here.
Yeah.
So June 1st means that we are close. I mean, it's less than 1 week away. Wow. Yeah. Next week. Good. Right.
Yeah.
So everybody on Twitter. 1st of June. June 1st.
1st of June.
Tabular Editor. Good.
Yeah,
nice.
And of course, with the release of Tabula Editor 3, we're going to update the Tabula Editor website so that you can go in and read all about the tool, see some videos with what the new version can do, and of course how to purchase a license. But it's very important for me to stress that even though Tabula Editor 3 is going to be a commercial product, we will still, and I will still maintain the open source version of Tabula Editor to make sure that we keep it updated if there's a new version of the Microsoft APIs or something like that requires an update, or if there's a bug or something that prevents the normal use of the tool, then we will of course make sure that that's up to date, and that the open source version will keep being a free download that you can use just like you can today. So basically the idea with Tabula Editor 3 is to provide a more premium user experience. And Tabula Editor 3 also addresses a lot of the, or at least some of the feedback that I've gotten over the years for Tabula Editor, but on areas that are much larger investments. For example, one of the very first feedback requests I got on Tabula Editor when it was first released back in 2016-17 was that there should be intelligence when writing DAX code. So you want to have some things that guide you when you're typing your DAX code.
Okay, sorry, I have to stop you. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, look at me. Tabular Editor is the best editor experience for DAX ever. Okay, forget whatever you did so far in Power BI Desktop or Visual Studio, whatever you did. It's a completely different game when you start using the DAX editor in Tabular Editor 3. Alberto and I used this for a few months. Alberto, do you want to say something about that?
No, when you popped up, I was totally scared that you were about to say, well, an editor is not needed because as of today, we have artificial intelligence writing DAX for us. So where's the problem?
Don't create. Okay. Let's remove. Alberto is going to create problems. Yeah. I had to. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So no, definitely. So this was, I mean, for me, because I also really found that the lack of proper intelligence was a big showstopper in the open source version of Tabula Editor. I really liked what Darren was doing in DAX Studio with providing some contextual information. But I just wanted to I mean, there are more problems than just providing some intelligence tooltips and stuff like that when you're typing DAX code that I had to solve in tabulators, and one of these being that you want to have error information, syntax information right there at your fingertips. You don't want to have to save and synchronize the DAX expressions to analysis services before you get the feedback on if you made a mistake in your DAX code. So in order to solve these problems, I actually had to implement a full-blown DAX semantic analyzer, a DAX parser, inside Tabula Editor 3. And this was actually a pretty big investment on my side. It took a lot of time to implement this, and I got a lot of assistance from Marco also on that part. Because when I started out on this, I thought I knew DAX, but I really didn't. I mean, I learned DAX as I wrote the code for this DAX parser. And the end result then is this full-blown DAX parser that fully understands all of the semantics of the DAX code, of all of the 400 and something DAX functions in the DAX language. And this parser is implemented in Tabula Editor 3 and in the new code editor for DAX. So it fully understands everything regarding row context, context transitions. It provides error messages right there and then. It even lets us do cool stuff like automatically refactoring the code. So if you have a variable and you want to rename that variable, well, then it understands what the scope of that variable is, so it doesn't accidentally change the name of another variable that just happens to have the same name in a different scope. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and it really just provides an entirely new experience, an entirely new level of comfort when you're writing and editing DAX code. You really have to try it to see what it is.
Yeah, I can confirm. Yeah. So just to clarify this a little bit more, but because we were talking about the present now is we start to see the future. The future is that if I can recap, Tabular Editor will have a commercial version which has only productivity features to enrich your productivity. That's the idea. But if there is a feature in the model that, like the calculation groups, if we have a new feature, I don't know what, that will appear in the TOM model, the free version of Tabular Editor will continue to support the new features going on. So it's not going to disappear, and you will be able to support maintaining the Tabular Editor open source version thanks to the commercial version, right?
Correct. And then, of course, people who invest in the commercial version will get a lot of more productivity features.
Of course.
And we'll provide plenty of information videos to show exactly what kind of features are in Tabula Editor 3.
Nice. So I think that now, before looking at some other details about Tabular Editor 3, we can say that we are working, Darren, with with DAX Studio version 3, right? What are we cooking? I say we because I'm partially involved in this, but what are we cooking? So I prefer you announce what we are doing for the next release. Maybe if you can say something.
Yeah, so it's probably not quite as big a leap as Daniel's version 3. As someone who's tried to write a DAX parser, I think I've tried to write about 3 lightweight DAX parsers. It's not easy. Granted, though, I was trying to cheat and not go too deep in the semantic analysis, and it just doesn't work. You really need to build a full-blown one, and it's one area that for future investment for DAX Studio is to get better IntelliSense. But yeah, the next version we're working on is largely we want to give it a whole fresh facelift. I think Power BI, well, it used to be Power BI Designer, then Power BI Desktop. It's been through numerous facelifts over the years and enhancements, and we're working on an enhancement to the graphics, giving it a freshen up on the UI, as well as adding a dark mode, which I know some people have been asking for a while.
Yeah, here we go. I prepared this DAX Studio dark mode. Let's go. Yeah, many people love dark mode. I personally am not much involved in dark mode, but I see this is a huge request, so we cannot.
Yeah, that's a matter of age, Marco. Don't worry.
Alberto, you're talking about yourself, right? I'm sensible about it. Okay, good. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I find I've used Visual Studio Code in dark mode, but I still like Visual Studio in light mode. So maybe I'm grey in between. But and there's a few other things. I did see someone asking about helping out with documentation, and definitely that would definitely be an area that people could help out with, especially on DAX Studio. I was looking actually today at a couple of different themes to see if I can tighten up the documentation and maybe improve some of the layout, because it's grown a little bit organically, and I think it really needs a bit of reorg.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, I think that there will certainly, I mean, we're talking about weeks, months, years. I mean, I don't think it will be soon, right? We have the new release. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's probably months away. I think we've still got, I mean, we're working with your designer to get some of the graphics done. I've largely conquered the switching of the themes for a lot of the controls. That's not too hard to do if you've designed from the ground up with theming in mind, but when you've built an entire large application with one theme, adding the second one is a huge undertaking. Yeah. And then, yeah, learning a lot of WPF to figure out why certain styles weren't cascading the way I thought they should.
Good. Yeah, I think this summer will be, because we are working with Daniele, who works for SQL BI for everything you see. If you see some good graphics in SQL BI, it's just because of Daniele working with us, not Daniel, another similar name, but Italian guy. And Daniele is working on refreshing the graphic of the DAX Studio, so it should look, like a commercial product. That's the idea, right? We want to see something that looks as good or maybe better than a commercial product from this point of view. Just because it's also, you work all day long, and so something like that, seeing something that is fresher UI is just better. So at this point, let's go to Daniel, because I think that Daniel, you pretty much announced everything about the features. I think that people who are interested in knowing the details of the features of Tabular Editor 3, there are already videos 1 hour long describing everything there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that the only missing point, and I see many people are waiting for that, we want to know the price.
Yeah. How much does it cost, right?
Yeah.
So and I'm happy to share that today for the first time publicly. So let me see if I can share here my screen. So, and actually,
wait a minute, I'm applying this here. Okay, so it should be here. Okay, let's go this way.
Yeah. So what I'm going to show you here for the first time is actually a preview of what our new website is going to look like next week once the tool is publicly released. So you cannot access this URL just yet, but this is how it will be. So we scroll down and just get the regular one-pager style web page here, where it shows some information about some of the new features and so on. And what we've all been waiting for is, of course, the licensing. So before explaining too much about the pricing, let me just first put a disclaimer here on the amounts that you see here on the screen, that these are subject to change, but this will definitely be the ballpark that we are aiming for. And maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll have some release discount or something like that. But this is at least what you should expect the pricing would be.
Yeah. Daniel, a marketing suggestion. Yeah. Next time you show the monthly price before the yearly price. It's a good idea from a marketing perspective. When you do a demo, always show the lower price. What we see now is the price per year, right? So that's the monthly price. Okay, good.
Yeah,
that's
so better. I just switched it to monthly, and so I'm not a marketing guy. I'm not a salesperson. I'm just a developer. I like to code stuff.
I know, for this reason, I thought that it was a good idea to sell. Oh, look, this is better for the selling.
So let me put a few more words on. So first of all, what you get. So as you can see here, we have 3 different kinds of licenses: desktop, standard, and enterprise. And the idea is that the desktop license is for users of Power BI Desktop who just want to use Tabular Editor 3 as an external tool for doing model refinements, adding measures, calculation groups, all of the stuff that you can also do using the open source version of Tabula Editor, but just with the premium experience, with the new UI for Tabula Editor, with the DAX parser and all of the cool stuff of Tabula Editor 3. So this version will be limited so that you can only use it as an external tool for Power BI Desktop. So that's the idea. Then we have the standard and enterprise versions. These are similar in terms of the features that they offer, but the standard edition is limited so that you can only use it on the entry-level versions of, or entry-level editions of analysis services. So if you use, for example, SQL Server Analysis Services Enterprise Edition, then you need to buy the enterprise version of Tabula Editor as well. Or if you use Azure Analysis Services, then the standard edition of Tabula Editor will only work with Azure Analysis Services basic tier. So this is for small to maybe medium-sized companies that have 1 or 2 BI professionals employed, and so basically targeting the medium-sized use case. So what you have to understand about the pricing model for Tabula Editor is it's really, really difficult to come up with a good pricing model for a tool like this, because ultimately the value that the tool provides is proportional to the not the number of BI developers or anything like that, but actually the number of BI consumers that you have in your organization. So if you're a large organization that builds huge tabular models used by tens of thousands of users, then the value of having a tool like Tabula Editor is much higher than if your models are only ever being used by 5 or 10 people. But of course, since we cannot really create a pricing model that takes into account how many users of your Power BI reports or your data models you have in your organization, then we had to set the pricing somehow. And so what we did was we looked in the market. We looked at other tools out there for tools for developers and tried to find some comparable level for that, again based on what we feel the value would be. So there you have it. This is the pricing. It will be on a subscription basis, where you commit to either a yearly subscription or a monthly subscription, if you prefer. We will also offer other kinds of licensing. If, for example, if you're a Microsoft MVP, you will get one license for free. And we will also...
Sorry, this is important. Many MVP are online. So if you are a Microsoft MVP, you will get this as a bonus for being an MVP from the company for which Daniel works. So that's good news.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, for consulting companies, we would also like to hear from you. You should get in touch because most likely, if you're a consulting company that does a lot of client work on tabular models, then probably none of these 3 license types will be a good fit for you. So in that case, please contact us, and we will see what we can offer to suit your needs. So that's the big announcement, I guess.
Okay, great. So I think we discussed about the future. So let me go back here. We discussed about the present, the past, the present, and the future. I have seen several questions. I think we are almost out of time, but I think there was some interesting question. Let me see, because in the meantime, this one. Besides the technical, I try to remember. There was one question. Okay, this question here. I don't know if you want to comment about this question, which is there any scope for DAX Studio and Tabular Editor to collaborate? And actually, we are already collaborating, but
Yeah. So just before this call, we just quickly discussed since Darren offers the sponsorship, we actually want, and when I say we, I mean my company, who are going to sell the Tabula Editor 3 licenses, that we actually want to sponsor Darren in his work with DAX Studio. And one option could definitely be that we can, instead of just sponsoring with money, we could probably also sponsor some code. And the DAX parser is a good suggestion, or maybe even better, the DAX editor itself, so that you get a similar DAX editing experience in DAX Studio as in Tabula Editor 3. So we don't have any specific plans at the moment, but that's definitely an option going forward.
Yeah, that's very good. Another question, I just seen this one. I think that, you can also talk about this. Actually, I think we can discuss with Darren about this too, because does this integrate with Azure DevOps? I think is about, we talk about using Tabular Editor and DAX Studio in the, in a pipeline, deployment pipeline, something like that.
Yeah, so at least for Tabula Editor, this will work exactly the same way as it does with the open source version. So there, yes, the answer is certainly you can integrate it in a pipeline. You can save the model metadata as a folder structure, so it fits well in the source control. So yeah, at least for Tabula Editor, the answer is yes.
And Darren, I think that did you see some comment about using DAX Studio to run tests for the model, right? So running DAX Studio, running a test and getting the result. Is something someone asked, or did I remember bad?
Yeah, no, there have been some requests on the GitHub issues for that sort of functionality, and I have looked at whether we have some sort of command line interface. Yeah. But at the moment, yeah, you don't get too much above sort of running a PowerShell script with AMO to run a query and dump out the CSV. I suppose with export to Excel, I think Tabular Editor has a much greater value proposition in DevOps than DAX Studio does.
I think that the testing area is creating unit tests for the model is an area that is not, doesn't have a good. I don't know, Darren. Do you have something in Tabular Editor 3 to cover unit test for?
Well, there are some techniques that can be used. Since with scripting, for example, you can execute DAX code and inspect the result. I think I wrote an article on this some time ago, or at least maybe provided it as a suggestion to someone asking the same question on GitHub. But there's not like a specific feature for unit testing. But maybe that's something to consider for a version 3.1 or something like that. Yeah. Good question around the trial period. Yes, you will have 30 days of evaluation period. So once we launch the website, you can just go ahead and download the software, no sign up necessary, and try it out for 30 days for free. Once you sign up for subscription, then yes, of course, you will be able to upgrade at any time as needed.
And I also had this question about the MVP license you announced. And I don't know how, if you want to comment.
Yeah, as long as it's you as an MVP who's using the software, then you can use it for whatever you want, even commercial projects. Think of it as a gift, as a thank you gift from the community for being an MVP.
Yeah. And okay, there is this other question about the single license cost. I think that it's simply it's a subscription, right? We have to repeat this, but yeah.
Yeah, recurring fee. Yeah.
Yeah. And there is another question about this. I don't have an answer. Is Tabular Editor 3? Do you have the portable version, even though you have the licensing? How does it work?
So we didn't initially think of creating a portable version for TE3. There would be an installer, but I would like to learn more about what the specific use case is. So in that case, please reach out. Because if there's a strong need for a portable version, then we can certainly discuss it. So what I imagine is that it's probably something for most people to work around the limitation of not having administrator rights on their own machines in order to install the tool. And in that case, yes, we can definitely provide some zip file or something that you can use instead of the installer.
What about people who are in the beta program? Do they have to uninstall or install? There will be an upgrade?
Should just be able to install directly and upgrade the existing beta version. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. We have a lot of questions, but okay. I don't know if you want to say a final word. We are at the hour, so probably Darren is, it's late. You want to go to sleep. What time is it now, Darren, in Melbourne?
It's 9 p.m.
Okay, not too bad. Not too bad.
Even for someone my age, it's not too bad.
Come on. a developer is always young. I don't understand. If you, as long as you write code, you're always young, right? That's the reason why I do that. Anyway, so a final word from Darren. Do you want to say something to close this, and then of course Daniel?
Do I want to say something? That's putting me on the spot.
Of course.
Yeah, it's partly been it's very much a sort of a passion project for me. It sort of started off as something you could do with multiple. You could use SQL Profiler and Management Studio, and you could export results, and you could put them in Excel, and you could kind of do similar things as to what you did with DAX Studio, given half an hour or so. Or you can sort of click a button in DAX Studio. So it's largely been sort of a self-funded, a self-motivated exercise for a lot of it. Is being inherently lazy. I don't like doing tedious things over and over again. So if I can code something, and it's great that it's been able to help so many other people out in the community and help sort of spread the word and hopefully improve people's DAX code and performance and things. So
I hope
it's an
so.
enjoyable journey, and it's a sort of a great community to be part of. So
yeah, of course. And I want this to continue for a long time. So Daniel, your final word.
Yeah, I fully agree with Darren. Same for me with Tabula Editor. It's a passion of mine. I really enjoy, the combination, the mental challenges that we get from thinking about DAX while also having to code some C# at the same time. It's something I really love doing. And one of the good things about this commercialization is that this actually allows me to now work on this full time, which I wasn't able to in the past. So that's, for me, it's just a dream come true, and I'm just so excited that the community has taken up Tabula Editor the way they has. The feedback has been amazing. I'm just really happy to be part of this journey.
Great. Okay, good. So I think that we will have a lot of common discussion in the following days. We will see a lot of comments. I hope I will update the page that I shown before, and for those that come late, this is the website, the short URL. At the bottom of this URL, we would include additional links. Tabular Editor is going to be published on June 1st, so the slide that you have seen today with the pricing will be visible on the web on next week, June 1st. And that said, I would say enjoy Tabular, enjoy DAX, okay?
Enjoy DAX Studio.
And Tabular Editor.
And Tabular Editor, yeah, but with DAX, it worked better.
Yeah. Okay, okay, guys. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
bye.